Hi guys, welcome to the video and welcome to this beastie here, which is the Boeing 767-300ER, and in this particular guise it's by Flight Factor and it's for X-Plane 10. Now Flight Factor have previously done a 757, which is significant because the 757 and the 767 share what's called a common type rating. Now for those who aren't familiar with a type rating is the bolt-on that you add onto your license. So you go and get your commercial pilot's license, your airline transport pilot's license, which is all great. But other than allowing you to earn a living, it doesn't really qualify you for the specifics of a particular aircraft. So what you then do is you go on and do your type rating. So there's a separate type rating for a 737, a 747, a 757, etc. What Boeing did with the 75 and 76 was they have a very high degree of commonality between the two aircraft in terms of systems, procedures, cockpit, etc. So what that enabled both the pilots and the airlines to do is have what's called a common type rating. So you can go and get a common type rating. That means you're type rated for both the 75 and 767. Really useful for airlines that fly mixed fleets because a type rating is about £25,000 there or thereabouts. A good friend of mine went and actually bought his own type rating. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a seat in the aircraft he bought his type rating for, so that's £25,000 well invested, other fashion. But the issue is that obviously a type rating being £25,000, if you can imagine being an airline and you want to fly mixed fleet flying, if you have 75s and 76s, it actually cuts down your costs, both in terms of crew training and also rostering. So it's a really useful tool for some airlines, which is why historically you would have seen quite a few airlines operate both types. However, these days the 75 and 76 aren't as commonplace as they were. They're starting to get a bit long in the tooth, although British Airways do still operate 767s, so it is still out there and it is still widely used. So it's older technology, it's last generation I think is the best way of describing it, as opposed to current generation. So that's the background behind, in effect, why we've ended up with a 767. I think it's a fairly obvious step for Flight Factor to have, having completed the 757, to then step across to the 767. Makes a huge amount of sense. What it does for us as a simmer is it opens a few more doors, because obviously those familiar with the 757 can do exactly the common type rating thing. They can jump into this without too much consternation, without having to learn too much more, but what it does is it opens up a new set of doors, because this is a long-haul transatlantic jet. You know, quite comfortable in terms of crossing the Atlantic and across the pond and whatnot. So it opens up a wider variety of destinations, airfields, airports, however you wish to look at it. But it means that if you're flying the 775 and the 76, you've in effect got the same sort of systems and systems knowledge, but it enables you to do a great deal more with it. Quite a good decision in my mind. Now, as is my wont with these videos, I tend to do them and break them down into three, and they are three fairly lengthy videos because I do go into quite a bit of detail. So the first video is this one, which looks at the exterior. The next video will be looking at the interior, and the final video will be looking at the actual flight dynamics. We'll cover a bit of the systems in the second video, and we'll have a look at some of the dynamics of the controls in this video as well, in terms of the movement of the exterior controls. However, without further ado, let's have a closer look at this thing. Now, the overall fuselage, the overall shape and the overall dynamics of the thing look really good. There are a few things that you can customize, so what we'll do is we'll have a quick look at that. If I go up into the plugins menu, you can actually do it from inside the cockpit as well, but what we'll do is we'll have a look at that another time. The plugins menu, you can see you've got 75, 76 menu. Now, an important point here is I encountered a clash between the 757 and the 767 when I installed the 767, because I already had their 757 installed, and for whatever reason the two had a real barney and a real spat at each other. And what happened was, when I first jumped into the 767, the sim locked me into the 767. So as soon as I tried to change out of the 767 to any other aircraft, it crashed. If I tried to start the sim at that point with any aircraft other than the 767 selected, it crashed. And the two had a real barney. So what I ended up doing is I ended up removing both folders for the 75 and 76, and then X-Plane 10 worked exactly as it should have done again. So it was obviously some sort of conflict between the two. And then this time round I installed the 767 and then the 757, the older product, over the top, and everything's worked perfectly since. So there's some sort of conflict going on there, but it's not insurmountable. you know, it fixed itself very easily for me. The only other thing I can suggest as well is occasionally the SASL, the SASL, causes problems with some add-ons. It's a very old piece of software now. It's starting to get a bit tired, and various add-on developers do modify it for their own to their own ends. So sometimes you get conflict with that, and I don't know if that's what happened, but certainly for me, it was a case of just deleting both files, both folders, and then reinstalling them in the opposite order. So that worked for me. If you guys have the same problem, then it's worth trying out. It might just work. However, the 7576 menu is the same menu now. Comes up with this menu. You do have all the same favourites that you did have on the 757, but it's got a slightly different display now. So what they've done is this iPad appearance, which I actually quite like. A friend of mine who I spoke to doesn't particularly like it. The volume, I've got it turned down because for some reason, even though we've got the engine off and we're outside the aircraft, it does come up with the interior noises of the terminal, which is a bit weird, having tannoy noises when you're out here. A lot of selections are available here. High challenge will allow you to set the probabilities of failures happening, real limits, real time limits, first officer in control, all of these kind of things, all very good. The charts, what you can see here is the charts that are set up in the system. What you can do is you can scroll through the charts, and these are the charts that get pinned to the yoke of the aircraft. All very good. You can actually load up your own charts and put them in, from what I understand, although I haven't got round to it, purely out of the fact that I tend to fly with the yokes hidden, so there's no point in having the charts on the pop-up for the yokes if the yokes are hidden. But there we go, that's just a personal thing. The ground, in terms of all of the features that are there. Now, one of the things I will mention with regards to the 767 is that the ground facilities are linked in to the aircraft. So, for example, unless the doors are open, you won't be able to load your passengers, and so on and so forth. Likewise, the passenger bus and stairs are needed unless you have gate config selected. So if you have gate config, you don't need these two to load up the passengers. All very good. And I quite like this system. It works for me. As I say, at least one of my colleagues finds it, they don't really like it, but I do. Dynamic blinds and winglets. Now the winglets, these things, as they appear, you'll see that they look absolutely massive. In real life, these are 11 feet high, guys. These are massive. They are 11 feet high. So when they look big here, it's because they are big in real life. Lovely graceful curve though, and they've done a great job of modelling them, because as you zoom in you can see just a lovely curve to them. Lovely bit of texturing on the end, so we'll leave those on because they're pretty. We like pretty. That's all very good. And as you can see, there's a lot of options here, so for opening doors and whatnot. Wing flex, I'm not a massive fan of wing flex, but with this you can take it all the way from solid, if you like, almost solid, all the way to blowing around like a sheet of plastic in the wind. Reflections, obviously you can change the reflections. Now that's significant because of some of the features with this aircraft, or with this add-on, that are brought by the developers. And then effects, again, same sort of thing. It does become pertinent. We do have some failures, so what we can do is we can go back here and we can do some maintenance. Successfully performed, and we go back and the failures have gone. All very good. Avionics, now some of these are greyed out, so they're not currently implemented, but I'm sure that at some point they will be. However, generally speaking, if it's greyed out you can't use it. If it's not greyed out you can. The interesting one here is the one that's greyed out but active, which is the PIP FMC. I did do a video in regards to the FMC challenge for the iFly 747, discussed the Honeywell FMC a little bit there, and what I'm going to do when I get a chance is I'm going to do the FMC challenge with this aircraft as well, and we'll see how it gets on. But at some point it appears that they're going to have the opportunity to have something other than the PIP FMC. There's non-PIP and there's also Pegasus, depending on the era of the aircraft, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Integrated Q Flight Director means instead of the two vertical and horizontal bars you end up with the sort of inverted V, and then all these options which are all really nice. A bit about Flight Factor and Step to Sky, and then the PA. The PA for me, I don't particularly like PAs in these things. Some will like them because of the immersion factor, some don't. For me, I don't. You know, that's just a personal thing. But it's nice that you can have it, and you can also select your own messages. Sometimes, however, things just get a little bit scruffy, and for example, cancelled has 2 L's, not 1. So I think sometimes basic things, you know, like that should have been picked up in beta testing, but obviously for whatever reason they weren't. So that's pretty much a quick look around that. You know, as I say, we've got the GPU plugged in. We've just done our maintenance. Now the maintenance is quite important, because there's a I don't know if you call it a bug or not, but one of the central hydraulic system tends to drain of fluid. The fluid levels drop very quickly, unnaturally quickly, so unrealistically quickly. So every now and again you'll get a warning and a caption, and the thing you need to do for the hydraulics is go in and just do a bit of maintenance, and it fixes it, not a problem. So really now you're looking at the outside of the aircraft, and one of the things I'm going to mention is the fact that there's a very, very long list of features for this add-on, and I do not propose to go through all of those features, because to do so is basically a checklist exercise of me going, hey, they say it can do A, it can do A. They say it can do B, it can do B. I don't propose to do that, because at the end of the day, if it's on that list, then it's quite easy to just see that they've included that as a feature. The only one that gets me occasionally is when people put things like advanced FMC. Define advanced FMC for me. You know, it's almost impossible to define, but there we go. So what we're going to do now is have a look around the outside of the aircraft, and for those who aren't familiar with X-Plane, if you press C, you get a free moving exterior camera. Really quite good, very useful. And we're going to use it to have a look around the aircraft. Now the first thing really is the overall shape. The overall shape of the aircraft is really nice. It looks like a 767. It's got the shape of a 767. Everything looks in proportion. Everything looks right. There's no horrible elements to it that I can see. So all things considered, I think what we're looking at is a very good shape representation. You can see the wings here in terms of the thickness from the wing root, which is a massive, great big thick lump of metal going on in there, all the way down to the nice slender wingtips. And of course, if you've got the wing flex set, you will see that that bending movement in the wings. All very good. Now, as I say, one of the key elements that they've brought in with this, or not brought in, but they highlight with this, I should say, is the element of the lighting. And I think you can see here already what we've got is quite a good effect in terms of lighting. And as I move around, you can see that sort of sheen. Now, I don't like aircraft that look like they've come out of factory, or that they're a glossy toy that you'd buy off a toy shop shelf. I like to see something that looks like it's been active and working. And we do see that here. It's got a sort of satin effect to the shine, which I really like for the fuselage. You know, these things can be grubby and dirty and horrible in real life, so I really like that lighting effect. And you can see that as you move around, the lighting effect kind of follows you, and it's a really nice effect. I really do like that. So as I look around, one of the things I'm going to mention is that in effect the exterior comes down to 2D and 3D portions. A few things I've noticed as I've looked around this thing previously, and I'm going to mention a couple of them now, purely out of sort of completeness. The first thing is that whilst I'll be looking at the 3D in a moment, 2D is the subject we're dealing with, and 2D includes the texturing, and there's some areas of texturing on this that I think fall below the standards that I would have hoped for a $65 aircraft. So I'll give you an example of the good, and then we'll go to the bad and the ugly. The good, if I go all the way down here, look at this information plate for the cargo loading, information sort of sticker. Look at the text as I zoom in all the way down here on the cargo door. Exquisite level of detail to have that level of detail. If we go to, I'm guessing this is going to be a static port. Yeah, static port. The clarity of the text there is just phenomenal. And then if I go to a panel join line, like that, it just looks like a smear to me. And then what happens is you see it when it joins with another panel, and this panel line is okay, and then it's got this bit of a splodge, and then you see the panel lines, they don't, I don't know, it's just, it comes over for me as a little bit scruffy and a little bit messy, this kind of stitched appearance here. Very odd. You can see like the battery connections here. It's almost as if there's something blocking it. Very bizarre, the battery connection information. Moving on from that, you can probably see it here. I've got this kind of breakthrough here, and it's kind of like almost a line of static that heads all the way along the aircraft. A very odd effect, very odd indeed. And you can see here it's got a 90-degree junction. just there. So it appears to me to be something to do with the modelling of the aircraft, as opposed to another factor of the sim itself. In fact, what we'll do is we'll scroll out and we'll just move the camera a little bit. Yeah, it doesn't seem to disappear. But when I move over here, look, it's not continued through here. So I think that's a thing to do with the modelling of the aircraft. I don't know, but it becomes noticeable. Some of the textures, as I say, are better than others. So if you come down here, you can see there's just a little bit of a where this is joined. You can see the panel line comes down here, and then obviously the texture panels don't quite line up. So there's areas where it's really good. I mean, this is incredible. And then you get to that and you think, oh, okay, you've got the attention of detail to that, and then we've got this. It doesn't help with the fact that the livery for British Airways is solid blue on solid white, or solid white, sorry, above solid blue. So things like that do stand out. But generally speaking, the textures aren't too bad. As we come back to the tail here, you can see we've got the same sort of thing here with a scruffy line and then a crystal clear line. However, what I will say is the areas where it joins are clear and nice. You know, there's no fuzziness around here, around by the fairing for the wing root. It's all crisp. There's no overlap in terms of the area that I can see. Again, with the engine, you can see that it's got nice shining, lighting and sheen on it, a nice satin effect, and you get the satin effect as well. The lighting effect with the rivet line around here, all very well and good. I do have a couple of issues with the engines overall. You can see a lovely effect with the pylon. Ignore this sort of crazing effect of my shadowing. That's to do with my graphics card settings rather than the sim. However, there we go. And you can see we've got some texturing for the underwing pylon, 2D texturing, nothing too dramatic. In terms of 3D modelling, we'll go through that in a moment, but there are elements of 3D modelling on the upper surface of the wings, for example, that stand out. But most of it that I can see is 2D sort of texturing as opposed to anything else. There's a significant part that 3D modelling comes into play with regards to lighting, and this is one of the things that they highlight, not just the glossy exterior that reflects stuff, but there's also additional sort of graphics features, for want of a better way of putting it, which they call multi-layer dynamic reflections. Now the multi-layer dynamic reflections, basically the best way of describing it is it's moving stuff, stuff that shines, and you can see movement in that shining is the best way of describing it. The obvious areas where that's apparent are anywhere where there's chrome to start with. So you can see the shiny chrome leading up here, the shiny chrome around the intake, and obviously in the heated elements of the leading edges of the wings and the tail. Now, with regards to that, I did look at it initially and go, hang on a minute, that's a bit shiny. You know, that's almost factory fresh. All of the aircraft that I'd been around have like a brushed effect to the chrome, a brushed metal effect as opposed to shiny chrome. And I thought, well, it just looks too shiny. I know one of the features they were on about is this sort of shiny dynamic gloss effect, and I thought it was a bit too much. And then I looked online, I did some research, and two things struck me. The first thing is that there are aircraft that do have this very shiny gloss chrome effect, which is in effect replicated here. The other thing that's apparent is that there are 3 engine fits available for this thing. For this aircraft, and as far as I can see, there is only one modelled with this add-on. I stand to be corrected if anybody knows any better, but the add-on models, the Pratt & Whitney engines, you know, that detail as you close in right there is very good. Now a couple of things have come out in terms of my investigations, shall we say. There's 3 engines been fitted to these things. There's General Electric's, Pratt & Whitney's and Rolls-Royce RB211s. Only a couple of airlines ever fitted the RB211s, one of which is British Airways, and as you can see the label that's on there is not Rolls-Royce, it's Pratt & Whitney. It's a bit of a shame because at the end of the day the textures for the engine are a different colour and you know whatnot anyway. So that's the first thing that stands out. The second thing that stands out is Pratt & Whitney and General Electric. You can see at the back of the core of the engine you've got these vents, and there's one on the other side which is identical. Pratt & Whitney and General Electric have their vents on different sides. So for the Pratt & Whitney, it's the port side of the engine has the vent. On the General Electrics, it's the starboard side. So here we go. This is on the starboard side, but it's showing Pratt & Whitney. What we'll do is, if you bear with me, I shall just zoom over to the other side. Straight through the middle of it all. Because we're zoomed out, it takes a week and a half to change our position. And you can see here, Pratt & Whitney's actually have the vents on the correct side on this side. So the vent should be on the port side of the engine for Pratt & Whitney, starboard side for General Electric. We've got the vents on both sides. So, okay. Having said that, it's not the biggest issue in the world. It's just one of those things where the more you do the digging, the more you realise that there are some inconsistencies, albeit not necessarily earth-shattering. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at the shine effect. Shiny, shiny, shiny. The shine effect. What's the significance of that, really? Well, the significance is, I've already mentioned this lovely satin effect and the 2D texturing. But on top of that, in effect, what we've got is a second fuselage and engine sort of layer, for want of a better way of putting it. And I shall show you what I mean. Let me just move out and go that way a little bit, because now I can use the zoom. The glazing is one of the things that they highlight as being particularly good with regards to this aircraft, and you can see the kind of rainbow. You know the sort of thing where you drop a touch of oil or something in water and you get that rainbow effect. You can see it on the glazing. You can see different colours and you can see the rainbow effect. And as I move, what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to move us in closer so that actually it's the camera that's moving. As we move, you can see that kind of rainbow effect moving around in the windows. Really pretty, really nice, gives it a good effect of glass and glazing, and likewise you can see the reflections moving around in it. Rather scary crew. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden or something, I don't know, but nonetheless, really nice effect in points. And then what you realise is that this layered effect means the following. So if I just scroll over here, you can see in effect what we've got is our underlying model, and then laid over the top we've got this kind of shiny effect, and you can see the panel for it. It's like it's an almost clear overlay, and you can see it's almost like a second skin on the fuselage, and that's for the glazing section. And then you can see it for the same sort of thing. If I go up here, you get the same sort of thing for the shine effect of the fuselage. So you know it's only visible if you look really closely at it, but nonetheless it's there. So if I go here, for example, you can see it here. This is your chrome effect at the leading edge of your tail fin, and you can see this kind of jagged, it's not straight or curved, it's this kind of strange effect that goes up that gives it almost this mirrored visual effect, but it also gives this almost double vision effect. So it's an odd effect. I think if you're at distance it's just not that noticeable. If you start to zoom in and pay attention to it, it's apparent how they've done it now in that reflection, reflecting on that. Same sort of thing in the engine. If you come all the way in, you can see this kind of element here. The blades are really nicely modelled. I do like the blades in the certainly the N1 stage blades, and you can see sort of the dark effect of the ring where the blades have got the support rings going around them. Nicely and tightly fitted into the engine. Bit of a sort of jaggy shape for the roundness of the engine, which is a little bit of a shame. And you know, all things told, I actually think the 3D modelling of the engine is very good. In fact, to be honest, I think 3D modelling overall is very good. The 2D for me lets it down a little bit, but the 3D so far, so good. So next thing we're going to look at is the undercarriage. So let me just mess around with my keyboard to try and have some ability at moving around. And as we get down to the undercarriage, you can see the level of detail here is very, very high indeed. Bridgestone tyres, you've even got the serial numbers for it. You can see as you go into the wheel hubs and scroll right in, the level of detail here is just absolutely awesome. All the various pipes, linkages, nuts, bolts, etc. are all here. Bit of an odd mismatch here. We've got the brake lines going into the oleo for some reason. But nonetheless, overall, really nice effect. Do like it. You can see all the different sort of parts and construction elements involved. Just move around here. And as I say, the overall 3D effect of the undercarriage in the undercarriage bay is very, very nice. Very nice indeed. I think you'd have to agree that the texturing and the 3D modelling is absolutely spot on. You know, it's difficult to find a great deal to be upset with there. Very, very good, very fine and very high level of detail. As I say, the odd couple of things like the brake lines here that seem to go into the oleo, the bottom of the oleo, and you can see through the N1 fan stage there. Very nice. So overall, core stage of the engine in there. Overall, the gear and the 3D modelling of the engines, the gear, the landing gear, all that kind of stuff really is very good. Let's just move forward. We'll have a look at the nose gear. All the usual protuberances of aerials and antennae and whatnot are present. Again, you can see that sort of outermost skin, but you can see them all sticking down the various radio aerials and whatnot. Very, very good. Very nice. Get it off. And again, the nose wheel, really nicely detailed, really nicely set out with the various cables involved. Very, very good, even down to the point of being able to see the steering for the hydraulics for the steering. So really is very nice. I think the 3D modelling is a really nice aspect to this. So the lights down by the nose gear, all those sections, really, really nice. So that's where I think the element for me is that overall this is very nice, really nicely modelled 3D. The shininess, if I just go back up here to the plugins, bring down this general, the volume is nice to be able to adjust for the aircraft, airplane. The fact that you can vary the wind flex, the reflections and the effects for me is really good. I don't know how much impact that has on performance, but actually from an aesthetic viewpoint it's really good. The fact that you can obviously change dynamic blinds and winglets makes a lot of difference. I think the texturing personally could have been better. I'm surprised at areas of it, considering the 3D modelling generally as a whole is very good. There's some inconsistencies with the type in terms of the engines. As I say, if I just have a quick look at my my reference here, the British Airways one used the Rolls-Royce RB211s, which obviously that's not what we have here. American Airlines, Air France and whatnot, and Lufthansa all are correctly modelled with the Pratt & Whitneys. The Garuda, I think it is, uses General Electrics, as does WestJet, so these engines are incorrect. In fact, they're both incorrect because the Pratt & Whitneys shouldn't have the vent on this side. They should have the vent on the opposite side of the engine. Likewise, the obviously the Pratt & Whitneys are correct on the other engine, but not this one. Logo is a little bit of a shame, really. So that's a bit of a downer for me in some respects. A very, very, very small one. And then actually one of the most interesting things is of the liveries that are supplied with this aircraft, one of the liveries is for X Airways. And I thought, who the heck are X Airways? Never heard of them. It turns out they're a virtual airline. They are a virtual airline that I think are Russian or something of that nature, but this is the first add-on I can think of off the top of my head. I don't know if the 757 is the same, but this is the first add-on I can think of where a virtual airline has had its livery as a standard airline within the package. Very interesting. Never really come across that before, because I think generally what happens is manufacturers are trying to mimic reality, and it's interesting to have that as a variation. Very interesting. Never come across it before. So you join me back outside now with the thing running, and you can see we've got all the lights on just to give it that special effect. I love things like the ground lighting. You can see the way the shadow changes here, and I do have HDR lighting enabled, so just in case you are wondering about that. But in the meantime, one of the things I'll do is I'll just come around here and down a bit, and you can see that we've got a lovely effect in terms of the nose wheel lighting there. We've also got a nice effect in terms of the the landing lights, although they get this strange, at certain angles I've found they get this strange sort of dark halo effect if you're too close to them, where it's almost like there's a dark centre with a halo around it. So I think it might be something to do with the HDR lighting, that, rather than anything to do with the designers and the developers. However, you know, a very nice effect. In terms of the sound's not overpowering, is what I would say. What we're going to do is we're just going to spool up this right hand engine. You can see the fan blades turning, you can see the core element of the engine. We may creep forwards a little bit, and you can hear a really definite change in the engine note. You can see the fan blades are changing in terms of their appearance and their position, the directions they're rotating. That strange visual effect you quite often see. And the other thing that's interesting to note, I'll just zoom out a bit, is you also see a change in the jet efflux look. You get dark puffs and clouds appearing every now and again. You can see it's changed as well. One of the really nice effects of X-Plane 10. So in the meantime, what we'll do is we will just scoot over here a bit. We've seen enough of the lighting, really. It's the lighting model in X-Plane 10 is always great. There's no real issues with that. You can see as I move around there, you've got the sort of chrome effect on the leading edge there. As I say, not necessarily my favourite thing, but nonetheless, it does as it says on the tin. You know, they've said you get this kind of chrome effect. It's there. You can see the lighting changing and the dynamic reflections changing with it. So it's all really good. Let's just come around here and then we'll start having a look at some of the animations. Okay, in terms of the wing, you can see exactly as you would expect. So these are your low-speed ailerons, high-speed ailerons. Use these at high speed because of the problem of control reversal at the tips. Rudder exactly as we would expect. Nice thing to see is there's no real breakup of the lines in terms of anything untoward. It seems to move nicely. You get a change in the shadow as it comes over here. It's all very good. All the nice little details are there as well, by the way, in terms of static wicks. I haven't gone through the routine of counting them, so you'll have to bear with me if I say that I'm not quite sure how many there are. But very nice overall. One of my bugbears actually is when you get to aircraft navigation lights, they have certain angles, and I forget off the top of my head what they are. I think it's something like 110 degrees or 120 degrees or whatever it is from the nose round to the starboard and port side. You should only be able to see the colour on that relevant side. So if you stood over here, you should only be able to see green, and then once you come around to the rear of the aircraft, you should only be able to see white, no red or green. And obviously if you're directly in front of it, you should be able to see red and green, but no white. So in terms of the navigation lights, so quite often you see a bleed through situation where you can see one light from the other. Well, we can't here, so let's just, wrong button, let's just zip forwards a bit, turn around, and there we go, there's green but no white, which sounds like a really petty thing, and it probably is, but you know, that's the kind of attention to detail that does make a little bit of a difference. So there we go. Right, in terms of animations, so we've seen the basic control animations. We'll just have a look at the tailplane. Oh look, it's lovely and smooth. So if I pull back or push forward, it's damped, look, if you see what I mean. If you just look here. So I'll tell you when I go from full to full. So full down, you can just, I don't know if you can just see that kind of faded edge there. That's that dynamic shine situation. So full down, full up, and it takes quite some time to travel. That's a nice effect. That I do like that. That adds a certain amount of reality to it. Okay, flat travel. It's going to take quite a while. Interesting thing to note here, in the first stage you actually see, if I put them back up, you'll see the ailerons change as well. So the ailerons lower. You can see it compared to this panel here. This panel here, by the way, is the spoilers. Again, nice smooth animation. You can see the actuating rods in here. All very nicely done, all very nicely modelled. We'll keep motoring with the flaps, and you can see the flap sponsons here, the flap tracks coming out first, and then they rotate down. Really nice animation. A lot of time and effort obviously gone into that. What we'll do is we'll just lift ourselves up a little bit. And you can see it coming all the way out now. Really nicely animated. Well, back to our old friend, the textures. Look, if you come in right here, you've got some lovely modelling going on in here. If you will ignore the jaggies, which are no doubt due to my graphic settings more than anything else. Lovely modelling, 3D modelling, and then we've got these sort of textures, which I don't, you know, maybe I'm being a bit picky because we're zooming right in on them, but we've got that bizarre scenario that you always see with a massive gaping hole in the wing, which occasionally you see when you come into land and you've got the spoilers up and the flaps down. You get this kind of bizarre effect. But what can we say? Well, what we can say is the animations are smooth, they are consistent across the board in terms of the way they move. There's no juddering or anything. Time-wise, they seem to match the timing in terms of what you would expect from an airliner. Again, the spoilers are smooth, you can set them to anything. There's damping in those as well, so I'm going to go from full up to full down in 1, 2, 3. You see it takes a second or two to close, so really nicely done. The animation itself is really nicely done. The only thing left to do now is to get airborne, and what we'll do when we get airborne is we will just do the animations for the landing gear and see how we get on. So I'll see you guys in a second. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the animations in terms of the aircraft. So at the moment we've got one stage of flap out. In fact, I think we've got 5 degrees out at the minute. I'm not going to bother going inside to check. However, we're at a relatively low airspeed, so we'll start manoeuvring with the flaps. You can see the deck angle of the aircraft is dropping as we go. And you can see we've got some lovely beautiful animations in there. We can look right up under here and see them all at work. And it looks absolutely stunning. Next stage obviously is to just have a look at what the gear animations are like. That is impressive. Look at that. Actually, look at the actuator rod involved in it as well here. That is really nice. Also, if you notice, the bogey position changes because these bogies are nose wheeled down, which is quite correct. So when you look at the pictures, if anything, if I recall seeing the pictures, they hang slightly lower on the front than the rear, but nonetheless, very nice. Let's try and do it so we get a view without the jet efflux. Look at all these linkages. That's a seriously impressive piece of modelling. Same thing here with the 2 stages of the doors closing. Very nice indeed. And then the doors close afterwards. That is very nice, and I'm actually very impressed with that overall. Really am. You can see as well the mirrored section is moving along with the slats at the front of the wing. So in summary then, really, what do we think about this thing in terms of its modelling? I have to say I'm really impressed overall. I was dubious, and I still am a little bit sceptical about the layering for the shining. However, the overall thing is really quite good. The overall package is very good. You know, the 3D modelling, the overall shape, the modelling, and the makeup of the large airframe, if you like, seems to be very, very good from what I can see. Likewise, some of the finer details that are present in terms of the aerials and the bits that hang on and the bits that stick out and the static wicks and all these kind of things, they all appear to be present and correct and in the right place, so that's all really quite good. The movement of the flying surface in terms of animations of the controls is all very good. Secondary controls in terms of flaps, etc., all again very good. The engine controls seem to be very good in terms of the way they spool up and spool down, the change in the jet efflux, the slightly darker, sootier exhaust that comes out. So all told, the 3D modelling of both non-moving and moving parts seems to be very, very good externally. The only things then to discuss are the textures, and it's the textures that occasionally let it down. As I say, these areas around here where the panel joins are, panel joins where it doesn't quite match up. I've seen a couple of those. There's one down here and there's one here and whatnot. You know, they let it down, which is a shame, because when we went into this area down here and the cargo doors and we could see the detail that's gone into there, you know, it stood out as why is that like that. The lighting effects, really nice. Like the lighting effects all round, including the actual lights themselves. As I say, I'm a stickler for the lights, and I do like them with this. Simple things like light attachment points for me need to be where the actual light is. All too often I see aircraft, older aircraft, certainly in FSX, and some new ones where the light doesn't flash where the actual light is, if that makes sense. So overall, with a few reservations, I think the exterior modelling of this thing is very, very good. Here we go, this is what I'm on about. You can see the green and the white, but as you go one way you get the white only, you go the other way you get the green only, so it's very nicely done. So really, yeah, I mean the exterior I've got no real qualms about. I think it looks very nice, and as I say, barring a few things with the textures and my dubiousness over the glazing effect when you're close to, I can see the benefits of it. I can see why it looks good and why it has a good appearance. The same with the chrome and all the various bits and bobs. But fundamentally the key thing is, does it look right? Yes, it does. The only thing, as I say, is the textures, but other than that, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I think it's a lovely looking aircraft. The animations and the undercarriage in particular really do it justice, as do the secondary control surface in terms of spoilers and bits like that. So yeah, onwards and upwards. I'll do the second bit as soon as I can, guys, in terms of the interior. Obviously these things take a little while to do, so I'll post it up as soon as I can, but in the meantime I hope you enjoyed the video, and take care.